The red Ferrari screamed into the hospital's emergency lane like a comet on fire. Tires shrieking against asphalt, engine roaring loud enough to make orderlies dive for cover. It skidded to a halt just inches from the sliding glass doors. Dad had never seen anything like this. The driver's door flung open. A woman in sweat-soaked scrubs stumbled out, chest heaving, arms trembling. Her hands were sticky with panic and the scent of fear. Her curls clung to her face, plastered by sweat and tears. In her arms was a little girl, limp, wrapped in a pink fleece blanket like a makeshift cocoon. The child's lips were blue. Her tiny arm hung lifeless. "She's not breathing," the woman shouted, voice hoarse, cracking under the weight of urgency. "Somebody help, please." Nurses and doctors ran, but before the girl was taken from her arms, before the crash cart screamed around the corner and oxygen masks were lowered and monitors beeped to life, the police officers had already grabbed the woman, stepped away from the car. The Ferrari still idled behind her, its hood low and hot, humming like a predator, red, gleaming, unmistakably elite. The badge on the grill was gold and arrogant. The woman turned slowly, her eyes hollow. "I didn't steal it," she whispered. As the child was pulled from her arms, the cuffs clicked around her wrists. She couldn't breathe. She said louder now, her voice rising like thunder inside a glass room. She was dying. The crowd forming at the hospital entrance didn't blink. Phones were already recording. The chaos was already content. The headlines were already writing themselves. And somewhere, beneath it all, before the moment of impact, before the judgment, before the sirens and slammed doors, there had been a decision. A moment when Maya Williams, housekeeper of the Grayson estate, saw the color drain from 6-year-old Elena's face and knew what no one else was willing to notice. She'd seen it at breakfast, the untouched oats, the too quiet hum, the little girl's hand pressing to her belly like something inside hurt too much to name. And then, an hour later, the silence, Elena on the bathroom floor, pale, shaking, gasping like a fish pulled from water, her lips edged in blue. Maya tried. The intercom dead. She grabbed her phone battery, 0%. She ran for the landline. Dispatch said the ambulance was 14 minutes away. Maya didn't scream. She didn't cry. She wrapped Elena in a blanket like a soldier dressing a wound. She ran through the hall, past gold-plated doorknobs and chandeliers worth more than her annual pay, into the garage where the Ferrari sat like a god. A glass box held the key fob. Maya didn't hesitate. She smashed the case with a fire extinguisher. The glass cut her hand. She didn't flinch. She carried the girl to the car, whispering prayers between clenched teeth. "Hold on, baby, please don't leave me." The engine roared awake. The garage opened like a mouth. The first red light came. Maya didn't stop. Not for traffic, not for fear, not for the sound of her own heart breaking in her chest. "Don't you dare die on me," she whispered, voice cracking as sirens flickered behind her. The Ferrari, engineered for speed and worship, was no longer a car. It was a vessel, a choice, a scream on wheels. It carried not just a child, but everything Maya had ever been denied: permission, urgency, belief. And now it carried the price. Back at there, the cuffs tightened. The child disappeared behind trauma room doors, and Maya, staring at the blood on her wrists, whispered again, not to the cops, not to the cameras, but to herself. She wasn't breathing. The Ferrari idled behind her. Red, still, silent, a symbol of what she stole, or maybe what she saved. The Grayson estate had always been the kind of place that whispered perfection. In every polished corner, the kind of place where even the silence was curated, where servants moved like shadows and emotion was considered noise. But today, that illusion shattered. Charles Grayson's footsteps slammed through the hospital corridor like a metronome of fury. People turned, nurses, doctors, onlookers. He was dressed like he always was, tailored navy suit, silver cufflinks, hair slicked back with purpose. But his face was twisted, not with grief, not even concern, with rage. A security guard pointed him toward their trauma bay. But Charles stopped cold when he saw the red Ferrari through the glass doors, scuffed, low suspension sagging, its sleek carbon fiber panel dash scratched. And then he saw her. Maya Williams, standing near the nurse's station, wrists cuffed, sweat still clinging to her neck. Her eyes were locked on the trauma doors, behind which Elena, his daughter, was being operated on. "You've lost your damn mind," Charles snarled. His voice cracked across the corridor like a gavel. "You stole my car, a $3 million custom-engineered machine." Maya didn't flinch. Her breathing was shallow, her legs unsteady. She said nothing at first, just kept staring through the glass, like if she stopped looking for even a second, Elena might vanish. You scratched the quarter panel. You blew the undercarriage. You cracked the damn splitter. Do you know what carbon fiber like that costs? Maya started. Barely a whisper. You're a maid, Maya. You are paid to clean bedrooms, not make life or death calls. His voice echoed so loud it made a passing nurse flinch. You're not her mother. You're not even qualified. The officer standing behind Maya stiffened. The receptionist looked down at her keyboard, pretending not to listen, but everyone was listening. And still, Maya didn't look at him. She spoke quietly. She wasn't breathing. There wasn't time. You had dozens of options. He exploded. Call the nanny. Call the estate manager. Wait for the ambulance. I did call 911, she replied, voice stronger now. 14 minutes. They said 14 minutes. She didn't have 14 minutes. He stepped forward, face red now, veins rising. You had no right. You drove like a maniac, through red lights, sirens on your tail. You turned my daughter into a headline. And just as he raised his voice again, a new voice entered the space measured, calm, like a scalpel in a storm. Mr. Grayson, a doctor in scrubs, stood in the trauma bay doorway, a clipboard in hand. His mask was lowered, his face exhausted. Charles turned toward him. How is she? She's alive, the doctor said. Stable, but it was close. If she'd arrived 2 or 3 minutes later, the lack of oxygen might have caused permanent damage. Charles blinked. If whoever drove her hadn't acted when they did, the doctor continued, your daughter might have died on your estate floor. The hallway fell into a silence so tense it nearly cracked. Charles's mouth parted. For a second, he looked like he might apologize, but instead, he said flatly, she destroyed my car. The doctor's eyes flicked to Maya, then back to Charles. And she saved your child. That hit differently. But Charles turned away without another word and walked behind the trauma doors. The cuffs stayed on Maya. The officer behind her cleared his throat. We'll need a full statement, ma'am. Maya nodded. Her voice was dry. I understand. But it wasn't him she nodded toward. It was the door where Elena had disappeared, where her tiny body had been wheeled away, barely breathing. That's what Maya saw. That's what she still clung to. Not the Ferrari, not the shouting, not the handcuffs digging into her skin. Elena was alive, and that was enough. But outside the hospital, the world was already spinning. The video had gone viral. Cell phone footage of the hospital entranced Maya shouting for help. Elena limp in her arms, Charles arriving and yelling about his car. The word Maid slicing through the air like a knife. Hashtags bloomed on social media like wildfire. Hashtag Ferrari Maid, hashtag justice for Maya, hashtag she saved Elena, and alongside them, the backlash. News anchors debated whether Maya should be arrested. Legal analysts picked apart her decisions. Political commentators turned her into a symbol. But Maya wasn't watching. She was still in the precinct, sitting in a bare, windowless interview room. No phone, no voice, only one question in her mind. Is Elena okay? The door opened. Detective Sarah Coleman stepped in. Her face was lined with experience, the kind of woman who had seen both guilt and grace and knew how to read the difference. She placed a file on the table and looked at Maya. You work for Charles Grayson? Maya nodded. And the girl, Elena, Maya said, I've cared for her since her mother died. Coleman opened the file slowly. The report says you took the Ferrari without permission, that you broke the key case, ran 5 red lights, and were pursued by 2 squad cars. I didn't run, Maya said. I drove. I drove to save a life. Coleman's eyes didn't leave her. You understand that what you did is technically grand theft auto. Yes, Maya said softly, and I'd do it again. Coleman leaned back in her chair. Then she closed the file and said, you won't need to. Maya looked up. Startled, Elena's alive. Breathing on her own now, she asked for you. And for the first time in hours, Maya exhaled. Not a sigh, a prayer. Release. Coleman stood. You're free to go, for now. But Maya didn't move, because deep down, she knew this wasn't over. The estate would come for her. The world would question her. And Charles Grayson, he hadn't said thank you, not once. But something was shifting. Maya could feel it, not just in the world around her, but in herself, because she had done the unthinkable. She had broken the rules that kept her invisible. She had chosen love over obedience, and now the cost of that choice had begun. Maya didn't sleep that night, even after the precinct let her go. After the handcuffs were removed and the bruises on her wrists began to fade, her mind stayed locked in that moment. Elena's eyes rolling back, her tiny lips turning blue, the house's silence swallowing her cries. Back home, Maya sat in the glow of a single lamp. Her apartment was small, to rooms stacked with second-hand furniture, and a bookshelf full of worn library books. A leather notebook sat open in front of her, blank. The pen in her hand didn't move. The noise outside, sirens, engines, the bark of midnight traffic, felt far away. All she could hear was Elena's voice, echoing from days ago. "Tell me the story about the bunny dress again, Mama Maya." That's what the child called her now. Not Miss Maya, not Nanny Don, Mama Maya. That name wasn't given. It was earned. Maya stared at the blank page, then slowly began to write. "She looked pale last night, paler than usual. I noticed when I tucked her in. I should have said something louder. I should have." She stopped writing, because the truth was, even if she had spoken louder, no one at the Grayson estate would have listened. Not to her, not to the help. 3 days earlier, the Grayson mansion had felt like a cathedral with no prayer left in it. Gleaming marble floors, high ceilings echoing with silence. Even the sunlight seemed sterile there, too bright and too cold. Maya had arrived early that morning, earlier than usual. Something in her gut had pulled her there, a knowing she couldn't shake, and when she entered the kitchen, she saw it. Immediately, Elena's breakfast tray sat untouched. The organic yogurt, the grapefruit sliced into neat halves, the steel-cut oats untouched. Maya added a single slice of cinnamon toast, the girl's favorite, the kind her late mother used to sneak her on sad mornings. Maya wrapped the toast in a napkin and climbed the stairs to Elena's room. The silence struck her first. The room was dark, curtains drawn, the faint scent of sweat hung in the air. Elena lay curled on the bed, her arms clutching a pink bunny dress. "Sunshine," Maya whispered. No answer. She rushed forward. The child's face was pale, skin clammy, breath shallow. Then her eyes fluttered open. "Mama Maya, my tummy hurts." And then her body went rigid. A seizure. Maya had seen one once, years ago. In her mother's hospital room, she recognized the stiff limbs, the gasping breaths, the helpless twitch. "Elena," she whispered, stay with me, baby." She bolted to the hallway, the intercom panel dead. The estate's maintenance crew had been fixing wiring for days. Her cell phone dead. The battery she forgot to charge. She grabbed the landline. It worked. 911. "What's your emergency?" "She's not breathing. She's 6 years old, pale. Blue lips, please, ma'am. Stay calm. Emergency units are en route. ETA. 14 minutes. 14 minutes. Elena didn't have 14 minutes. Maya stared at the child lying on the bathroom floor, her lips turning bluer by the second. And that's when she remembered the car, the Ferrari. She ran down the hall, past the room she wasn't allowed to enter, past the grand piano that hadn't been touched since Mrs. Grayson's funeral, past the paintings of European horses and oil portraits of men who'd built empires on silence. In the garage, the car sat in its shrine, red, shining, sacred. The key fob floated behind a glass box. She didn't even pause. She grabbed a fire extinguisher, smashed the glass, and reached inside. No alarm sounded. Just the click of fate. She threw open the door, ran back upstairs, and scooped Elena into her arms. The child was limp, wrapped in the bunny dress like a cocoon. "I got you," Maya whispered. "I got you, sweet girl." The engine roared as she buckled Elena into the passenger seat. The red gates of the Grayson estate opened wide, but they didn't feel like freedom. They felt like a dare, a test, a line Maya had just crossed and could never return from. She ran. Red lights flew past cameras. The Ferrari howled like a creature set loose. Horns blared. People cursed. Somewhere behind her, the sirens came, but she didn't look back, because every time she looked at Elena's chest barely moving, she felt the seconds slipping away, like water from a broken dam. Now, days later, Maya sat at her kitchen table, the weight of it all crashing back over her like a second wave. But that wasn't what hurt most. What hurt most was what she heard later. Charles Grayson had arrived at the hospital, not to ask about his daughter, but to scream about his car. He hadn't even looked at Elena through the glass. He had pointed at Maya like she was the criminal, the trespasser. "You're not family," He had said, "You're the maid." That word stuck. That word stung. But what no one knew, not Charles, not the police, not the media, was that Maya had been here before. Years ago, her mother had died in a waiting room because no one moved fast enough. A heart attack, a system to slow, a hospital to full. She had watched life leave her mother's eyes while a nurse fumbled with a chart. And Maya had promised herself never again. Not on her watch. Not this time. She closed the notebook and stood outside. The wind stirred the city awake, but inside her, something stronger had already awakened. She hadn't just driven a car, she had driven a revolution. And now, it was rolling forward, with or without Charles Grayson. The first thing Charles Grayson did when he got home wasn't check on his daughter. It wasn't to call his PR team, or even pour a drink. It was to storm into the garage. The Ferrari sat there under a canvas tarp, pulled back just enough to show the damaged scrapes along the wheel arch, a hairline crack in the front splitter, red paint dulled by heat and grit. A tiny pink fiber clung to the seatbelt buckle, barely visible, Elena's blanket. Charles didn't touch it. Instead, he stared at the car the way a man might stare at a tomb. Then he called Olivia Moran. She arrived in our later head of strategy, longtime advisor, and the only person in his life who knew where all the bodies were metaphorically buried. "This is a disaster," Charles said, shoving a tablet into her hands. "The video has over 12 million views. I'm being crucified." Olivia clicked play without flinching. There it was again. Cell phone footage, grainy, unforgiving. Charles storming into the hospital corridor, his voice thunderous. "You're not family. You're the maid." Maya's face in the background, eyes hollow. And then the child, Elena, limp in the doctor's arms. The word "she saved her life" flashing across social media captions like a verdict. Olivia paused. "The video? How long have you known this was going viral?" "Since last night. I was trending by breakfast." She folded her arms. "You're being called a monster. Some headlines are using the word racist. Others are calling for you to step down from your board positions." "I'm not stepping down from anything. She saved your daughter's life." Charles, he didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the bar in the corner of his office and poured himself 3 fingers of scotch. "I'm not going to apologize to someone who broke into my garage and took my property." "You're not apologizing to her, Charles," Olivia said sharply. "You're apologizing to the world watching you become everything you claimed you weren't." His grip on the glass tightened, then softened, then shattered glass breaking across the tile for the first time in years. Charles Grayson didn't have the answer, didn't have control, and Olivia saw it. Meanwhile, across the city, Maya stood at the foot of a hospital bed. Elena's cheeks were less pale now, her curls wild, pillow warm, damp from rest. A soft oxygen tube sat beneath her nose. Her chest rose and fell slow, steady, alive. Maya didn't speak. She just sat in the vinyl chair beside the bed, her fingers tracing circles on Elena's blanket, humming the lullaby her mother once sang to her in a hospital waiting room. Not so different from this one. And then a small voice broke through the silence. "Mama Maya." Elena's eyelids fluttered open. Her fingers, weak but determined, reached for Maya's hand. "You stayed. Always," Maya whispered. Outside, Detective Coleman leaned against the doorframe, watching. Later, after Maya stepped out for coffee, the doctor approached her with a clipboard. "She's recovering better than we hoped," he said. "The seizure may have been triggered by an allergic reaction or undiagnosed epilepsy. But that's not why I stopped you." Maya blinked. "What is it?" "I wanted you to know. We submitted a report to the city." "A report?" He nodded. "On what happened? The paramedic delays, the broken estate intercom, the drive, the car, all of it. Because what you did," he paused, glancing toward Elena's room, "might have broken a dozen rules, but it saved her life. If that was my daughter, I would have prayed for someone like you." Maya didn't respond. Her throat wouldn't let her. Back at the Grayson estate, the staff buzzed with whispers. Maya's name passed from room to room like a forbidden hymn. The head chef paused while chopping carrots. She drove the Ferrari through 5 red lights, murmured a Maid. They rested her, but then let her go. She saved the girl. In the servants' lounge, the head butler Carlos, gray-haired and stiff in posture, closed the newspaper and looked at the young valet beside him. "Something's changing," he said. That afternoon, Charles walked the length of the estate with Olivia trailing behind. "She's back at the hospital," Olivia said. And Charles, reporters are camped outside your gates. Let them stay. They want a statement. I'll give them nothing. Then they'll write everything. Charles stopped, looked at the fountain in the center of the courtyard, water flowing in perfect spirals. I should have fired her years ago, he muttered. But you didn't. I was sentimental. No, Olivia corrected. You were blind to what she really meant to this house, to Elena, to you. He turned to face her. She broke my trust. She broke the rules to save your blood, and with that, Olivia turned on her heel and left. That night, Maya stood outside the estate gates. A guard hesitated before opening them. She didn't flinch. When she walked through the front doors, the marble floor echoed like a courtroom. No one stopped her. Not the butler. Not the driver. Not the nannies. Because something unspoken had begun to move, a shift, a storm, a reckoning. Maya headed upstairs. Elena was asleep again. Maya sang under her breath, brushing curls from the girl's face. She was about to leave when she heard footsteps in the hall. Charles stood in the doorway, pale. I didn't know you were here. I came to see her, not you. They stood in silence. I read the doctor's report. He said, then you know she wouldn't have made it. He nodded once, then stepped forward. I want to talk. I'm tired of talking. I want to understand. Maya looked at him, hard. Why now? Charles's voice cracked. Because I saw you in her dream. Maya blinked. She said, you were driving a red rocket. And she wasn't scared. Maya's hand pressed over her heart, as if trying to stop it from breaking all over again. Charles exhaled. I don't know how to be the man I'm supposed to be for her. She doesn't need perfection. Maya said, she needs presence. He swallowed. I want you back, not as staff, as her advocate, as someone who speaks and is heard. Maya's eyes narrowed. And what if I say no? Then I'll still owe you everything, he said. And you'll still have changed me. Maya didn't answer. She didn't need to, because the power had shifted, and Charles knew it. So did the walls of the house, and the world beyond. For the first time in a century, the servants of the Grayson estate were not whispering. They were gathering. It started as a quiet murmur near the greenhouse. Carlos, the butler, who had once served 3 generations of Graysons in perfect silence, stood near the rose trellis. His gloved hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but age. And something else. Resolve. You all saw it. He said, you all heard what he said to her, and what she did for that child. The gardener nodded. It was her or no one. She was the only one who moved. She broke the rules. She broke through the rules. Behind them, someone unfolded a chair, then another. By noon, 20 staff members, maids, drivers, kitchen hands, mechanics had filled the courtyard beneath the magnolia tree. At the center was a single folding table, and on it, Maya's leather notebook. The wind turned the pages softly, like reverent fingers flipping scripture. Maya stepped into the courtyard just after 12:07 p.m. She hadn't planned to speak. She hadn't expected the staff to be waiting. She certainly hadn't expected the choir, but they were there, every last one of them, including the young maid from Colombia who barely spoke English, but brought a pot of jasmine tea for Maya's nerves. The dishwasher from Haiti, who had started a WhatsApp group named Ferrari Family to share updates about Maya's case. The groundskeeper, who wore his Sunday church shoes in quiet protest. And in the back row, Olivia Morin, in a gray blazer, arms folded, watching with something like awe. Maya stopped at the front of the circle. The house loomed behind her, massive, perfect, quiet. She took a breath. I was never meant to be seen, Maya began. Not in this house. Not in the news, not in the back of a Ferrari. A ripple went through the crowd. But when Elena stopped breathing, I remembered something my mother used to say. She closed her eyes. If a house forgets how to listen, someone must scream. Silence, then a sound, soft, rising. Voices. The butler, Carlos, had started to hum. One by one, others joined. It was not a song of protest. It was a hymn. A full brass quartet emerged from the side garden staff, who doubled as musicians in the local black church Maya used to attend. Their horns curled upward into the sky like offerings. They began to play a slow, brassy rendition of Lift Every Voice and Sing, the black national anthem, powerful, raw, undeniable. Maya turned slowly, and she saw Charles Grayson standing at the third-story balcony. Watching. Not speaking. Not moving. And this time, he didn't shout. He just listened, and maybe that finally, was enough. The music swelled. Staff began to rise, one by one. Some held hands, others stood still. Faces streaked with tears. A few raised photographs. Old staff who had passed, never thanked, never known. Maya stood in the middle of it all. No uniform. No apron. No badge. Just presence. She lifted her notebook and read aloud the names of every housekeeper, driver, and cleaner she had ever worked with. Names forgotten by the payroll system. Names misspelled in Christmas cards. Names that had kept the lights on and the laundry folded. She closed the book and said, "You call us help, but we are the foundation." Thunder cracked in the distance. A storm coming, but no one flinched. Maya looked up at the sky and smiled. "Let it rain," she said. "The roots are ready." Behind her, Olivia stepped forward with a clipboard. "This is a proposal," she said, "drafted in consultation with labor lawyers, advocacy groups, and former staff. It outlines a new system, wages, benefits, emergency, protocols, child care support, and education reimbursement." She looked straight at Charles on the balcony. "Sign it," she said, "or watch this house collapse." Charles didn't speak, but his daughter, standing beside him now, Elena, wrapped in her pink bunny blanket, tugged on his sleeve. "Papa," she said softly, "that's my mama, Maya." And for the first time in his adult life, Charles Grayson nodded without resistance. "I'll sign." The staff didn't cheer. They didn't erupt. They exhaled. Because this wasn't a victory won in battle. This was a garden reclaimed. And as the rain began to fall, Maya raised her face to the sky. She had been silent. She had been dismissed. She had been arrested. But she had not been broken. She was the woman who drove through red lights to save a child, not by blood but by love. And now she had driven straight through the gates of history. Spring came late to the Grayson estate that year. The storm had washed the courtyard clean. But it also left behind something no one expected: growth. Chestnut saplings dotted the perimeter of the once pristine rose garden. Tiny, determined things, barely 3 feet high, planted by the staff, funded by anonymous donations, named in honor of every domestic worker who had ever passed through the estate's gates unnoticed. Maya stood at the edge of the garden, her palms dirty, her knees in the soil. She had just planted the 26th chestnut. It was for Marta Garcia, the woman who once scrubbed the marble steps with bleach until her fingers bled, and who no one remembered when she collapsed in the pantry from exhaustion. But Maya remembered. She remembered everyone. Behind her, Eleanor's laughter floated through the wind like wind chimes. The little girl ran barefoot through the grass, stronger now, her curls bouncing with every step. "Mama Maya, come see the big one," she called, pointing to the tallest sapling. Maya stood slowly, wiped her hands, and walked toward her. "That one's yours," she said. "Mine. I planted it the night you came home from the hospital." Eleanor reached up and touched the thin trunk. "I want to be a gardener when I grow up," Maya smiled. "Then you'll grow more than flowers." Across the yard, Charles watched them from the stone path. No suit today, no phone in hand, just him, awkward in his own silence, learning how to be present. He cleared his throat. "There's something I want to show you." Maya followed him through the renovated west wing of the house. Once the servants' quarters, now turned into a community wing. Walls had been repainted, lighting warmed, and along the hallway now hung black and white portraits blown up, framed, captioned in gold script. Photographs of former staff, a woman sweeping the stairs with a baby tied to her back, a cook stirring soup over an open flame, a chauffeur in a pressed uniform standing proudly beside a rusted Rolls-Royce, and then Maya, the largest photo of all. Captured in that very moment's wet-streaked, fire extinguisher in hand, reaching for the Ferrari key, Elena in her arms, underneath it. The plaque read, "Maya Williams, she drove through fear, February 17, 2025. A new day began." Maya's throat tightened. Charles stood beside her, not speaking, just witnessing, and that, finally, was enough. Later that week, Maya was asked to speak at a labor rights summit in Washington, D.C. The organizers had called her the Rosa Parks of domestic workers. She laughed when she heard that. "I didn't plan to drive that day," she told the crowd, "but I also didn't plan to live quiet forever." The room rose to its feet. That same week, she launched the Elena Initiative, a nonprofit dedicated to emergency care access and protection for domestic workers, with mobile pediatric response vans deployed in 3 cities by summer. The first van, painted Ferrari red, with a quote on the back that read, Don't you dare die on me, baby. Don't you dare. Months passed, and then, one evening, Elena sat on Maya's lap under the magnolia tree. Was it scary? She asked. When you drove, Maya took a breath. Yes. Did you cry? A little. Did you think the car would fly? Maya smiled. It already did. Elena looked up at the stars. Can I drive one day? Maya laughed. Let's start with a bicycle. Then silence. The good kind. The kind that means home later. When Maya was alone, she opened her leather notebook. One page remained. She wrote, Justice is not a courtroom, or a headline, or even a law. It is a woman behind the wheel, knowing she will be punished, but choosing to drive anyway. It is the breath that returns to a child. It is the garden no one believed could grow. It is me. She closed the book and placed it on the shelf next to framed photographs of her mother, of Elena in her bunny dress, and of the chestnut saplings at dawn. Outside, the wind stirred the leaves, but nothing could uproot her now. Maya Williams had driven through red lights, through judgment, through history. And in her rearview mirror, shame, fear, silence, ahead, a road still unwritten, but finally and fully hers.